That should go back to 1970. I don't think you all were around. This Singaraja debacle taking place where the logging program started for Sri Lanka. That is where I got involved, and I then also became active not just only in the Singaraja area but also general environmental interest which I have always had in my life, and then got involved with probably the first targeted environmental organization which was led by one Mr. late V. Ambalawana, who was a very famous tax lawyer at that time. Under him, we organized with Mrs. Airankani Serasinghe at Dekar, I think was there. Charita was there. Charitaratna became the secretary. We formed the Sri Lanka Environment Association. That was in anticipation of the 1972 World Environment Day or Environment Conference, at Stockholm. That was going to be a delegation going out from Sri Lanka. So I was the first student representative in that organization. From there, I was associated with Mrs. Serasinghe, the Rukrakagan knows, and then we formed our own organizations in the university in 1980. I got involved with the Mahavali surveys and so on. So I have been actively involved in the environment in two angles. That is what makes somewhat I look differently from others. One is my academic side. I had an academic understanding of the environment rather than activist understanding of the environment. I was standing outside the American embassy in 1972 Earth Day, 22nd April, because that was one of the first events across the world that happened for the environment. So from there, it has been a continuous story. So as I always say, my vision of how I see the environment is somewhat different from an activist point of view. To me, most activists are very emotional. They really don't see the problem in its real sense. You try to do things because you see something wrong and you really want to respond. I'm not saying that that is wrong, but when you want to take solutions for an action, it's a little different. You have to fall back on the information. You have to fall back on the science, very importantly on the science, because that is at least the only path we have to bring together common minds and for common action. Otherwise, we will be so much built in our emotions and strengths of some things that are not really true or not visible, but in which you believe so much. That makes a big of a problem. And the second thing is that science has never proved anything in the world. Science has always made us accept something based on facts. So if the facts change, you have to accept that you have to change. So if you have been a very good active environmentalist, now I'm talking 70 years ago, I can't be the same man today. So this is one of the accusations. Everybody says, sir, you were so much, you did this, you did that. I said, yes, I did all of that at that time. Today I am different because I have understood the situations quite differently. So you have to always understand that the scientific approach to the environment and the emotional approach to the environment are two different aspects, but both are needed, because if the emotional persons don't jump up and shout, sometimes the scientist and the science is asleep. You need something to trigger the situation. Both are necessary to ensure that we have the right environment for the future. All the big innovations of the era or the centuries were accidents. Of course, the intention was there. Wright brothers wanted to fly. DNA didn't come out if the people didn't were thinking about what it should be. But the double helix was seen in the coffee cup. This is all accident happening. Lightning, you look telecommunications, you think of all of this, you will realize. So you see, you have to have emotion, the desire to be in it, to see the question. But when it comes to solutions and applications, emotions can't be the pathway. It has to be science and rational thinking for the future. I became the first professor of environment science in this country. I always say it, not on the grounds of that I have done a professional course in environment. My background is, as a professional, I am an ornithologist. I am a birdman. So I have a connection to the environment directly anyway. But to be concerned about the, let's say, cutting of forest or pollution of a factory, all of that is very much my activist background. But because I applied my science into all of those things, and wrote about these things, it became different. That way, I was more recognized as an environment scientist also, to be given the chair of Professor of Environment. The first time opened up in Colombo, and it was given to me. So that is a difference that I see. If somebody asks me what is my profession, I say my profession is ornithology. I am not environmental profession. So it's a very different angle. Myself is very different. Very good question. The history of the environmental issue, some people can say, was some things that we had recognized and realized from the time humans started exploring and exploiting the nature for survival. We have to think of ourselves as an animal which evolved into this planet and became successful compared to most other organisms. All animals that are surviving today are successful, but some are at our mercy today, and the whole environment as such is at our mercy, because we became, I would say, somewhat say, successful or something like that, thinking that we can control the system all the time. But our capacity, which is very different from all other animals, is that we have a so-called brain. The brain has this capacity which is not in the animal world, which is to experience the present, remember the history, connect the two, and project it to the front. Now that connection of the past, present, and the future, because we can even visualize what we want in the future. Now that makes a huge difference in terms of what we want to do. Now whenever we started doing something, we always saw the good part of it in the future, and we went. So let's take a very classic example, which is the problem that is prevailing in this country at this very point of time, because of a decision to ban applications of chemical fertilizer. Just look at it in that, just think of applications of chemical fertilizer. Where did this come? It happened because we wanted to survive in the face of a famine that happened during the early 60s. So we had no choice but to increase the food production to survive. And that is a good reaction. But the pathway we took, unfortunately, became a situation such that we became the slaves of the pathway. If you want more food, you have one of two choices. Either you have to grow a lot of food, or make the food that is growing give more production. We took the second option. We gave that plant food. Now we call it fertilizer, so that the plant can grow better and produce more. But when it starts producing more, it is the production that we are interested in. Now, would you like somebody else to take it and go away? You won't like it. So you have to protect the product from any other agent or any other organism that is going to take it and go away. We have a name for it called pests. So you have to find a mechanism to prevent your product being taken away from other organisms. And we invented the word called pesticides. There's another interesting part for this. Now, when you give food to the plant that you planted, there are the opportunists also. No? There are other plants also among the plants. No? And all the other plants other than your plant is called weed. So you have to get rid of all the weeds also. So we invented the weedicide. So we gave the food, which is the fertilizer. We invented the weedicides to prevent the competitive advantage for other plants other than your plant. And then we gave pesticides to ensure that your production is not taken away from you. What was the result? The famine went away. People survive, and today somebody can even ask you, why are you blaming the fertilizer system, the chemicals? Would you have been alive today if not for doing this application in the 60s? How can you answer that? That's the fact. That application was the one that made the difference in the production of food and the survival of the species, that is the human species, today. So we say the green revolution of the 60s was successful, but the green revolution of the 60s was based on these types of applications. Now thereafter we were still not happy, because now that we have got successful, we now start producing ourselves. And our numbers start shooting off. Where are you going to feed the shooting off numbers? So you have to increase the production. Now the three applications that you use to increase the production becomes a bit of a restriction, because the plant can respond to the fertilizer only to a limit. So now you have to make another strategy to produce more from the plant. So we started what is called selection process. We started selecting plants that were doing better in response to the applications and trying to identify how did that fellow become better. Now, how did that fellow become better is going inside the plant. So by going inside the plant, what are we talking? Genetics. So we started this process of mixing the fellows who are doing better and getting better products. That's what we call hybridization. We didn't go and tinker around with the genetic material because we didn't have the technology to do that in the early 70s. Now, having got the hybrid, we were not even still happy. Why? The human population was not going down, no. It was still increasing. And therefore, we had to put more and more food. But to find more food, you have to have more space. And that also became a limitation, because to get the more space, you have to go into the natural systems and start destroying those natural systems for it. So you are finding one by one problems arising. That hybridization story is called living modified organisms in today's terminology, because you have not done anything inside. Gradually, we realized that that is also not enough. So, as I said earlier, we went into the plant and looked at the genetic structure, that is the mold of the human or the animal or the living organism. 5 chemicals, these 5 chemicals in a certain arrangement gives us the uniqueness of a human and an animal, a dog and a bird and a cat, but that also is the story of production. So now if you can go into this array, which is called genetic material, DNA, RNA, look at the sequence. And if you can change the sequence to make it become more stronger than what it was, produce more than what it was, or take the qualities of some other plant and put it into this new plant and produce another kind of plant which looks nicer, better, tastes nicer, we come to what is now called genetically modified organisms. All these, looking at in the angle that we are talking, is for the production of more food. Sometimes tastier food. Now you see there are some people who don't eat meat. No. As ecologist or an environmentalist, I would say if you are a meat eater, you are doing harm to the environment. That's a different argument that can be shown in a different way. But because you don't like to eat meat, but you can get meat today in the tomato, because there are tomatoes which contain the protein of the meat inside in higher concentrations than normal, because it was modified. Now you have purple tomatoes. Tomatoes are red, no? How can it become purple? These are all genetically modified. You have fish, salmon fish, which are normally only 1.5 to 2 feet. Today they are 6 feet, 3 times. So imagine how many more people can be fed. Why did we have to go to GMOs? Because we needed more. And these tinkering and things doing with nature, ultimately, one by one, are going to become incursions into naturalness. That is where the issue comes about. Where are these incursions? To produce more food, you need more land. Where do you get the land? It has to be from nature. Now, this is a new practice which we started only 12,000, 15,000 years ago. So the whole history of changing the nature of the planet and talking about the issues of the environment is around 12,000, 15,000 years ago. So in this picture today, we know the population increased, we needed more land, we needed more cultivation, we needed to do that with better quality seed, we will say, we needed to do with applications that are very strong, and the net result, we have encroached into all the good land possibly that was natural. So we have lost forest, we have lost good grasslands, we have lost some wetland systems, and so on and so forth. The applications, the common term that I'm using for the weedicides, pesticides, and all these other things, have changed the chemical structures and are affecting us in a different way. Because how can something that is not part of nature be part of you when you take it inside? If that chemical substance is taken into you, and if that is not a natural substance, how can it not have any effect on the person? We are having those effects now. And as you know, people are somewhat saying what to do. Can't help, sir, we have to feed the people. The issue has been coming, How many people died because of asthmatic situation? In Sri Lanka, in Colombo, that we have an average of 35% increment of asthmatic patients over the last 10-15 years. When we decided, at least 2000, around 2000, 2002, when we decided to stop leaded petrol in Sri Lanka, there are surveys that have been done. Evidence is available that children living besides the roads had more lead in their blood than anybody else. Where did it come from? Because this is what we were using in our petrol. So why? Because we can see all these extraneous substances that have gone into the natural world are reacting when it gets into our systems. Now, as I said, action has been taken to get rid of these chemicals because it is a disaster, right? But then there are so many people who are living out of that system. The thing is all linked up into another very interesting component of our environment, which is not natural. A lot of people forget this. That is economics. If you don't have money, you can't do anything. No. Even the poorest of the poor man has to have some money. Even if it is not the currency, it must be at least the word of mouth. The ability to put the hand out and say, I want something. Where did that come? Where did this currency thing come? You can see this is an artificial construct of the human mind. The artificial construct, the human mind, overtook us in many, many ways and have becoming the master. So the theory tells us where and how to be what we are. So when you realize that there is something wrong with your application and try to stop it, there are those that who will say, look, you can stop it, but I am not going to survive. So how am I going to survive? I need the money. So you see, this is all entangled system that we have created. Why we are not realizing this? It took a long, long time. Till the Millennium Ecosystems Assessment, we didn't accept the fact that it is the economic system that we put in place after 1948 that has caused almost 99% of all environmental problems. The Millennium Ecosystems Assessment done in 2000 was the assessment of the health of the planet with respect to around 38 plus indicators. Every one of those were negative, which were very clearly saying, look, we have an issue. And where did the issues turn off? After 1948. Everybody asks very obvious questions. Why should it have been after 1948? That is after the Second World War. That is when this new model, economic model came into being. Demand, supply. Now that is what has driven us all these years. We are now at the point of really recognizing all of these things. In the last, I would say, since about 2005, the Z and Alpha generational change, right? The Z generation is now really at it. They are saying, you know, all our fathers and mothers, this is what they have done. They have destroyed the planet. We shouldn't blame them like that. They were trying to keep us alive, not destroy it. But what to do? That is the reality. Now we are reflecting and realizing that every thought process that was there, from 72, we are saying it now. 72, the Stockholm Conference was on the human environment. 82 was the mistake reflection. Why? 72, we said humans are poor and therefore they are suffering, they must be looked after. The poverty alleviation strategy starts there. Poor people must be looked after. Developed people are well off. The model needs to be relooked at. Have that model changed? Even today, it has not changed. The only change that has happened in the environment is that the 4% of the world's population that was emitting all the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has shifted to the east. It was in the west, but after 2013, it shifted to the east. It came to China, right? Because China adopted the model of the west. Now the 4%, we as environmentalists always blamed the 4% of the world consuming everything and polluting the environment, all of this. But now we have to say it is not the 4% of the environment. It is like the 70% of the environment who is doing the problem. But if you go within China, is it all of that almost 2 billion people plus? No, it is less than even 1%. The story is still the same. Why it has not changed? That is the reason. 20% of the world is consuming 80% of the world. 80% of the world has only 20% to consume. Now, if the 80% of the world wants to consume the same amount of consumption that the 20% is making, where is it? Now, that is not a new phenomena also. That phenomena was identified by Mahatma Gandhi in 1948. Right? He said, if I am to make India look like Britain, I need 4 worlds. We dare not listen to those things now. Right? So that is why it has not changed, because change the 80% mindset, not wanting what the 20% is having. How fast can you do that? How quickly can you do that? We might be able to change the 20% mindset because it is a small number, but that also we have failed now. If you look at the consumptions of the 20% of the world over the last 40 years, it has not gone down, no, it has gone up. In fact, it has become more environmentally disastrous. Now, when you are saying what about plastics and all that, we are thinking that they are doing very good with the plastics because they are recycling it and they are not destroying and throwing it into the atmosphere, so therefore it is good. But where did that 9 huge tons, the 7 worlds of polythene in the ocean come from? Much of which came from the developed countries, right? Now, Bangladesh banned plastics way back from 1960s, 68 or 69, they decided we are not going to have plastics as bags and things like that. Developed countries started saying, no, they didn't ban. They reused it, remodeled it, restructured it to use for different purposes. And the waste treatment mechanism changed. The reality of the fact is we are the only animal in the planet which produces waste. Change that means you have to change your lifestyle totally. How can you do that in this spate of time? Because your aspirations, your desires, the model systems that have been created, what we have been trying to achieve, the product process, all of this have been to show, look, you have to be like us. And you have to have this unending economic growth. See, there's a conflicting situation between the economists and us now. Economics is a continuous growth. Where can you continue to grow? We say as ecologists or environmentalists, that is not possible. Naturally, there are limits. We are all looking up to achieve something which is going to be satisfying one person or our surroundings. That is why we are failing. My problem is not your problem. As long as you see that my problem is not your problem, there is a thing. I say to turn it wrong. Your problem is my problem, then the response will change. And that is not happening in the world as yet because we are being plugged down, pumped down for status quo. Maintain the status quo. So how to change that mindset? Unless we change this subtle mindset, it is not going to make a difference. And that is where the problem is. We see a problem, we try to rectify it, but there are dependents on the problem. Then how do you make a difference? How do you make a compromise? Those who have to make the compromise. I can go on and say, no, when people say too expensive coconuts are 100 rupees, I say, but why are you saying it's 100 rupees? You should be willing to pay 200 rupees because at the end of the day, that 200 rupees is going to the man who's producing it. So why are you complaining? Why are you saying that it is too expensive? Because you don't want to come down. You want to stay up there all the time, right? You want to collect. You want to accumulate to take the next leap. This is the reality which is part of this theoretical model that has been put into our head. Unfortunately, that is the fact of matter. So changing it is not easy. Realization of it is more difficult because everybody has been brought up in a certain way. And that model of bringing up to us to this point has been very standard across the world everywhere. It is not what we as environmentalists would like it to be. That is the reality. Tourism has been my interest also for some time, since 1974, I think, when I became the first person to talk about environment to the tourism sector. So when I did talk to them on the first lecture itself, I can vaguely remember, everybody was saying, what is this, sir? What do we don't need? But this is the reality. What is it that we are promoting? I will take it in two pieces. One is, if you look at the global tourism thing, why are we traveling? Because we like to travel. We like to travel in the sense that we like to see new things. And when somebody says, look, we advertise and say, come to Sri Lanka, this is the, what you call the best place in the planet, all of these things are said, then people like to go and see the best place in the planet. Now that is the desire of humankind. We are very, what you say, exploratory. We like to go out. Now, why are we doing this? We are doing this because we like to tell the world. It's that we like to tell the world and we also like, therefore, to experience. If you are in one location, you like to hear, and once you hear, you want to experience. So therefore, you like to travel to get there. So when the travel mode became easier and better, people traveled more and more, and that then became an industry, which is the tourism industry. In this game, obviously, like the food production system, you're going to have people going from one place to another place. And those who are going from one place to another place must have a means to go from one place to another place. And the mindset of the person who is going from one place to the other place is going to be very different now. Now, people may travel from, let's say, a developed country to a developed country. They are still doing it to get an experience of different kind now. Now, because you don't have that experience, let's say, for an example, in one country, you're going to that country to get it. Similarly, you're going from that country to another country to get an experience which doesn't exist in your country. The desire to add more into your system, experience, that's why I said exploratory. Humans are always exploratory. To get some things into your system to enable it. And then when somebody says, there is something like this somewhere there, your mind has been triggered. Now you want to go and have that same experience because you don't want to be second to another person. No. That is another humankind. So when somebody has said, I have seen this, you also have to say, I have seen it. Or you have to match it in some way. Yo, what did you say? You have not seen this? No, this is normal. So we must not think that these are abnormal features. These are normal features of mankind. That is, these features are the ones that we are telling, keep it down, keep it down. That is not going to help. If humankind is to survive collectively, you can't have each one becoming superior to the other. We must all work together. But now you can see in the tourism sector, this is what was happening. There was this competitive thing to somebody saying, you can go to this place, you can go to this place. Now both are coming to, let's say, Sri Lanka. But how are you going to make sure I am going to get the clients and that person is not going to get the client? Now you have to tinker with the system. You have to either say, based on the very obvious, the cost, right? We just take that simple thing and say, right, to come to Sri Lanka from country A, it takes $100. And you're saying, no, look, I will give it to you $50. Now, where will you select? Because you're going to try to get the same experience. The two organizations are promoting the same experience, one at 100, the other at 50. Now, I am the guy who's going to seek that experience and I'm going to say, my God, why should I go for $100 if I'm getting the same thing at 50? So I will go at 50. But the experience that is provided would then result by all these people coming there. Now, would that have the capacity to do it? When we opened up in the 60s, 65, we all sold the one product that the traveler wanted, which we call the sun, sea and sand. That is what we gave. Did we even think of that? We have some things called Singaraja, a thing called Anuradhapura, there is Sigiriya, all of this. The early days, it was sun, sea and sand. And that is why we had the so-called add-ons. No, that is your language. So you come and sleep around for 1 week in the beach. And then you have a day that you can go and add this thing. You can go to Kandy and come a day. You can go to Anuradhapura and come. You can go to Yala or Vilpattu in a day and come back. And then we saw that this is very lucrative. This is a very good industry. This is a very good way to make money. When the industry realizes that you can make money out of the system, then you start building on it. There is not one person, there are two. Now it becomes 3 persons. Now it becomes 4 persons. Then it becomes 5 persons. The net result, the institutions that are providing the facility is going to compete with each other. Now, how are you going to ensure that the person who wants the services is going to see the discriminatory difference between the providers? Now, you have to tinker it. Now, the provider has to start saying, I am better than him, so I must find what to do. So, the services are going to change accordingly. So, the services providers, which is in Sri Lanka, is going to try and work his mind out and say, I'm going to build a hotel that is bigger than that person, or I'm going to build a hotel which is going to provide more facilities than the other person, and so on and so forth. And were there any standards about the environment impact, the quality environment, the service providing, all of that didn't exist in the early days. But when the competition increases, that's why we always say in the industry, competition is good because competition refines the product, makes it better. But making it better at the expense of what? That is the next question you have to ask. But if you make the product better at the expense of the environment, then it is not going to work. That is what we realized gradually. In Sri Lanka, the sun, sea and the sand became the target. But we lost it now. Today, people are not coming for the sun, sea and sand. And I was one person from the early 70s said, what is it that we are promoting? This sun, sea and sand is available everywhere. It is just that the world has not opened up for that purpose. And we really saw it when it happened, when Maldives picked up, because we lost it. We lost it in the 80s because of the turmoil that happened in this country. Maldives picked it up. And now people fly over to get the sun, sea and the sand to Maldives, which is more expensive than even in Sri Lanka. Why are they willing to pay that amount of money to get the sun, sea and sand in Maldives when you can still get the same thing here? There's a difference in the mindset that you promote it, the way you do it. But at what expense? People think that Maldives doesn't have an environmental problem. You have to go and see the island where all the trash is being piled up, right? The Takshisha Island or whatever it is. They had the problem, they were looking after it without showing it to the world. We didn't think of it because that is the obvious issue that is going to come up. As the numbers increased, everybody is trying to jump the bandwagon. Nothing wrong in it. That's very good, which is an indicator that the industry is growing, the services are being provided, and more people are traveling because, as I said at the very beginning, we like to travel, right? So we are providing the provisions and the provisions were becoming better and better. So a ministry or a state agency is developed for that purpose to somewhat control the system and not allow it to run wild, but as we were going, we realized that the damage to the environment was increasing. The tourist industry, well done, is going to be a good tourist industry. But the environmental cost of it is going to be huge. In the initial stages, we saw this. And then you saw a transition in the industry. Gradually, by the 80s, there were those who realized, look, this is not a good thing. You know, this is causing so much damage in different places of the world. We need to explore the real nature, and we need to get the experience of a real world, the natural world. And that is where the whole ideas of nature tourism, ecotourism subsequently came to be. Otherwise, the tourism industry in big hotels and big places will survive, because it's not. Then why is it that the nature tourism industry and the ecotourism is more expensive than the classical? Because you are providing an experience which is very different from the classical. Because if you go to any big hotel with a big name anywhere, basically it is the color that is different now and the layout of the interior. Otherwise, the things are the same now. The facilities that you get are the same. The food that you eat is the same, except that the chef is different. So therefore, you have a different mixture. So I said, if you want that type of difference, come to Sri Lanka, because you will never ever get the same meal twice. Sri Lanka is a place where no two meals are the same. Even your rice and curry is different. If you eat your rice and curry once today from your mother, you go and eat the rice and curry next door, you're getting a different taste. But you go to any hotel, you eat, you get the same thing. And if there's any subtle difference, it is only because that person who is doing the cooking is not doing it right. You watch the MasterChef program, you will realize that that is the problem. They want it to be the way the MasterChef is. If we are individuals, the taste must be individual. Now come to Sri Lanka, that is it. Why? Sri Lankan cuisine does not tell you put a gram of spices. It doesn't tell you put a spoon, tablespoon or teaspoon of spices. It say add spices to taste. So you see, this whole thing becomes different. So if you are going to provide something that is very unique, the uniqueness in the transiting world, the changing world, is the one that is going away from us. That is why the natural-based ecotourism industry in the tourism industry started picking up. People were now realizing, God, this is the same now. Even if I'm in country A, or if I'm in country B, or if I'm country in C, it's the same thing. It's just that the colors are different, the layouts are different, the language may be different, but otherwise it is almost the same. We go to the same buffet, we go to the same food thing, and they are all laid out and they look the same color and same thing and all of that, right? And you have to expect it anyway, but then you need the new exploratory experience. That is what they went outwards. Now, when you're going outwards beyond that, you can have a problem. That is the environment problem. So once the environment problem was visualized itself in the industry, we have the issue. So from the beach, when we start going and coming out, now you're making an incursion into an area which you didn't do before. Now you go to Kandy and come, you go to Anuradhapura and come, you go to let's say Yala, Vilpattu. Now, going up and down in one day, it's not an easy task. Everybody is going to complain, and that is what happened. And then the tourist board decided, okay, we will have enclaves in these major places. And now you can see how these things have evolved. So the industry was bursting out because the need to travel burst. People wanted to, and in this model that we had, the economic model, people are getting more and more into their hands because the growth was going up. And that is only possible by consumption, promoting the consumption. So the tourist industry also promoted the consumption, not just eating, but satisfaction to the mind. So you have competitive products developing. Then the travel became so much. Then you have the budget traveler and all of these things, the expensive ones, the budget travelers, all of these started changing. And at the end of the day, we saw the charter flights coming to Sri Lanka. We lost all those things because of the problems that we had. But you can see these things are going to happen, and that was going to cause definitely some I won't say all, but some environmental problems were going to happen, depending on how you then provide the facilities. Then the food became an issue, right? Where are you going to give the food that you want? See, I am one guy who fought in your industry to say, and I am still fighting today, right? Why is it that you have a Sri Lankan corner in your buffet? I said, you can't have a Sri Lankan corner. You should have everything else in a corner and Sri Lankan should be the middle. It must be the center. But here you have Sri Lankan corner. He said, this psychology itself you have to change. You don't come to Sri Lanka to eat British food or American food or Thai food or Indian food. You are coming to Sri Lanka to eat Sri Lankan food. And we should provide it. So these are the problems that you have in the industry with respect to the environment. So in order to provide the meals, the services, goods, we had to go out and bring all these things. I have a lot of experience, which I say, why must you structure a room which contains more than 65% of the materials from abroad? Why can't that become the other way around? Okay, there may be some substances which are not available in this country because it is not part of the market system. It is not something that can be, let's say, sold and bought or whatever it is, therefore. But why? Why must you have wallpaper? Why must you have the carpet being brought from abroad? Why must the chandeliers come from abroad? Can't you go think that this is not needed? There are plenty of people in this country who can make a chandelier if you tell them to make it. But that is the mindset that is not there. See, it is possible. It is just that we need to think in those frameworks. Otherwise, we have to duplicate what is not available in this country to satisfy the traveler who comes from whatever country he comes. And that can definitely have a huge environmental impact. And it has, because we have to realize in the industry, our industry, tourism industry, is a highly consuming industry. The satisfaction of the traveler is on consumption. That is the reality of the average tourist industry. Now, why do I say that in the average tourist industry? Because you can have these extreme boutique or ecotourism facilities which might not have any of the so-called consumptive norms that are present in a, let's say, 5-star hotel. The fancy hotel is not available in that place. You are paying $250, $500 for a night for a mat. These are available. Now, what is the difference? It is the experiential difference with quality, unique and not duplicable. Did I not see it last year or year before last? The most expensive dinner or the meal is available somewhere down Galle in that hotel, some 25,000 US dollars or something like that. Why? Because you can't get the same thing somewhere else. But what are we doing there? We are all targeting the consumptive society. In the consumptive society also, there are those people who like to fall right down onto the bottom and come and get the experience of what is there. But the person who's traveling, experiential traveler, is requiring something. So you sort of, create that so that that person gets satisfied and he says, now see, I'll take one last classic example for you for industry, service provision. All of us are very much concerned about nature. It has been always a problem when everybody sees the number of vehicles that are going into Yala. For a day, 600 vehicles plus are going into the park. And we are complaining and saying this is far too much. It is a problem for the animals. And we were all complaining. A survey, not just one, 2, 3 surveys were done. They come out and they are all happy. Now here we are complaining them going inside. And they are also complaining at the gate. We are waiting for 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour to get inside. But when they are coming out, are very happy. We are very well satisfied. We are really satisfied. So then what is the problem? We are seeing the problem. 600 vehicles going inside. That is not what should be the case in Yala. Everybody who's coming out, more than 80% are very happy because they have all seen the leopard. Now that is all that they came for now, which means the 600 vehicles, these are just numbers for numbers' sake, went inside to see the leopard. And if more than 80% have seen the leopard, they are happy. So what is the issue with the numbers then? There is no issue. At the end of the day, what have you done? You have promoted Yala because those 80% are going and saying, go to Yala if you want to see the leopard. They are not going to say you will have to wait half an hour at the gate, because that half an hour in the gate and the anxiety of I don't know whether I will go inside just goes out of the window when you have seen the leopard. And after that, this is the place to see the leopard. And he goes and promotes it. And then you get more and more people coming to go there. So I said, very simple. No, why are you wasting so much? Why don't you do like what Africa is doing in many places in Africa? If you all know about the African tourist industry and the wildlife tourist industry, there are parks where you are definitely going to see the most unusual thing in the world. And yet you will say, this is so natural. There is no difference. No, this is, but we know how that unnaturalness has gone away, but nobody talks about it. And that is not unusual in the wildlife world also. We can do that. If the concern is that the 600 vehicles that are going inside the park is causing natural disasters inside the park, which is a fact. You have to repair those roads every 3 months when we used to repair those roads only once a year. And that is what we used to do in Yala by closing the park for 1 month. Now almost every 3 months, people have to repair the roads. In 2018, the Department of Wildlife Conservation earned 2 billion plus rupees. Is that bad? You will say fantastic. But the environmentalists and the wildlife enthusiasts saying, you all are destroying Yala by sending 600 vehicles inside. But the COFA is saying, fantastic. You all are giving us all the money that you need for the country. Now, this is the reality. So how do you make things different? There are models. I am telling you, there are models. But are we willing to do those models? Sustaining something, changing the model, providing the experience, you can do it. But not at the expense of the environment. So that is where in this industry also, they have realized it. I wouldn't say that the tourist industry that existed in the 1970s is what is existing today. If you look at all the different aspects of what has happened in the industry itself, you will see that there's a huge change in the environmental responsibility. When Tony Blair goes out to Africa and realizes what was happening by the British tourists going to Britain, he comes back to UK and says, you have to establish the responsible partnership program immediately. That is what transformed into Sri Lanka also and had the responsible partnership program in this country also. We had to become responsible. We had to make sure that the so-called environmental issues that were in the country with the result of the tourist industry was minimized. We still have that responsibility. At the end of the day, it is not the sea, sun and the sand that is the most important thing in Sri Lanka. It is our nature, which is not duplicable in any place. You can't duplicate nature. Nature experience anywhere in the world is not duplicable. It is unique. But how you recognize that uniqueness and make it into a product for the person to come and experience is the challenge in the industry. It's not easy to make the product that is so unique because you have to look at, to understand it, you have to know it and think of it and make it possible. Then only it works. So this is where it is. So be innovative. Industry is plenty of opportunities, right? So you can give, you don't have to go to Rome to see Rome. All of these things are potential possibilities in the future, but what you have to realize is that all of these potential possibilities in the future are all vetted under the environmental assessment. They're all being looked at how best can any one of these new products that are coming into the world can be environmental friendly, because we have without question come to the point of realization that this mode of development, this model of development, and this way of providing services and facilities to the future cannot continue at the expense of the planet. How we are going to do it is going to be a very big challenge, but we know the very technology that has brought the problem is the solution. Technology is the problem, but it is also the solution, because that is the innovativeness of our mind. Technology is the innovativeness of the science. Science is understanding what is around. Converting that into a positive side for use is technology. So the industry has huge potential to do this for the future. On the realization of what has happened, I emphasize on the word realization. If you don't realize what you are doing in the industry, you will not want to change because you are happy, no? Why must you change if you are happy? Why must you acquire something if you have the full satisfaction of what you from what you have? You don't need it, no? No, that is not the reality. You always want it. So let me give you a little bit of nonsense in the nonsense. Nonsense is nonsense, no? Right? Do a needs wants analysis of yourself and find out why you have so many shirts or t-shirts or skirts. Change that, it will change the environment. Definitely, yes. There is no question about it. As I was saying earlier also, it is just that we have been talking and not really taking action. You see, we have been responding to the problem from as way back 1970, we can say. The first time we raised our heads and raised our voices for the environment was 22nd of April, 1970. Ever since that time, people have been talking about the environment and coming up with solutions, and where the issue has been recognized in different parts of the world in different ways. In the developed world, there are developed people who have come out and run actions to say, our world is changing, we have to do it. In the developing countries, we have been talking about that we have to recognize that some of the things that are happening are bad, so we have to change it and we have to sustain it. But this polarized system, which is one of the issues that I say, has been somewhat the reason why the necessary environmental actions that were recognized from a model that was wrong, I would say, for the world, being imposed, trying to get involved or trying to seek to do, has resulted. In 72, the world discussed the human environment. Is there anything wrong in this planet, or is there anything wrong with the humans, was the question that was discussed. At that conference, as I said, the main issue was, you guys are talking to us about the environment and environment problems. Look here, we are suffering here, looking in this poverty state. The spokesperson for the developing countries was Madam Indira Gandhi, right? And when she spoke on behalf of the third world countries, she was very, very clear when she said, your problems don't exist in our countries. The problem in our country is poverty. Our people are poor. We don't have even the means to feed ourselves. But that was an awakening talk, which also highlighted and showed the world that there is this very sad hidden agenda inside all of these things, that the developed model is the one that needs to come down to the developing world. But to get that to come, it can't just float through. No, there is what we call an investment transfer, right? The developed world didn't develop things out of nowhere. No, it came out of their own efforts and their inputs and things like that. And so therefore they have put a price to it. So that needs to get transferred to the developing world, means that the price also needs to be paid back. But money is the factor that was not there for the developing world. And if we were to elevate ourselves from poverty to come out to a level of equity between the developed world, we needed money. And that is what Madam Indira Gandhi requested the world to give. And that is what was approved. So 72 ended up by saying, we will develop the world. And to develop the world, we will give the money that is available in the developed countries to the developing countries. All the money came as grant money. You look at the money flow from the developed world to developing world, you will see 72-82 was the best 10 years. We don't have no debt crisis like today. Here's the money, do anything and get developed. Come 1982, all the environment problems that prevailed in the developed countries prior to 1972 are now visible and being experienced by the people in the developing countries. Is this the transfer of alleviating poverty? In other words, is the transfer of environmental issues that prevailed in the developed countries emerging in the developing countries, the transfer of development? Water pollution, air pollution, you name it, all of these things, toxic chemicals, all of those things came in. Now what do? You have to find a new model. And that is why in 1982, under the chairmanship of the then Prime Minister of Norway, Brundtland, Madam Brundtland, a committee was appointed, look into what went wrong in the 10 years from 72 to 82 in this development model and tell us where we should go. We'll give you 5 years. And in 5 years, they came up with our common future, the Brundtland Commission report. That is the one that redefined the word sustainable development, which is to meet the needs of the present while ensuring the needs of the future generation. Now, have we achieved that? Have we even changed those words? No, we are not even changing those words. That ideology of sustainable development, which had in it so many other philosophical thought processes that had to be blended, was taken to Rio de Janeiro, adopted as Agenda 21. Even today, we are following the context of what is given in Agenda 21. The strategies have not basically changed. Subtle changes in terms of the situation changes. Otherwise, it is still the same agenda. The sustainable development goals that we are expected to achieve by 2030 is based on Agenda 21, which was adopted in 1992. So the obvious question is, what did we do all these years? You come to 2012, I'll skip 1 year and come to 2012, and we go and adopt a resolution. Institutionalization of sustainable development must become the future. Now, what were you doing from 92 to 2012? Because you can't implement something if it's not institutionalized. So that is what we were doing, sleeping, right? We have not done it. Why? Because you have to change your mindset. You have to change the model of the world for it. So the lessons that came out from 2012 is what is now we call transformation requirement, right? You have to transfer things, right? Now this year's theme will be that. So in this transformation, you need to recognize that this model that we have with respect to the theoretical model of growth, the theoretical model of supply and demand, which we will let's call economics, the theoretical model of development, all have to change. In the future we are talking about green economics. Now a subtle example of what green economics is, you see, in the economics, people never talked of things called externalities. We in the environment used to blame them and say, you guys are not interested in what happens when you say, buy this, buy that, put a price, make it cheap, make everybody get it. You were not interested, right? Now they are interested. Now they say, no, we are very much concerned about the externalities of every action we do. Everything we do, there is an externality. And we are concerned to ensure that that externality doesn't become a problem to the internality of the issue that you are doing. Now, what is the externality? Let me put it to you in a very simple way. You are driving a vehicle. Today, you may be going in a hybrid or electric vehicle. If you were driving a fuel combustion vehicle, what is it that comes out at the back? It's the combust fuel, carbon dioxide and water, and whatever impurities that may have been in the fuel will come out from there after burning. Now, if you're sending out carbon dioxide and water and some, let's assume, we know that there isn't much impurities now, but imagine there is, or let's say, let's go back. When we were using leaded petrol to make the petrol function better, but nobody realized that you're going to send it out from the exhaust. Now, what comes out of the exhaust then? There is a lead, there is the carbon dioxide, and if your engine is not tuned properly and if it doesn't function properly, you're going to get carbon particles also. That is the black smoke. Now, you are in the vehicle with the air conditioner and all of that. Did you bother to ask the question, what will happen to that lead that goes out of my exhaust? Or the carbon dioxide that goes out from the exhaust? Or the carbon particles that went out of the exhaust? No, because the problem that is coming out of that was not part of the economy of the vehicle running. The using of the air conditioner had chlorofluorocarbons. Before that, nobody thought about the air conditioner becoming a problem to the atmosphere, no? But today, after the ozone story came in, you had to all shift from chlorofluorocarbons to hydrofluorochlorocarbon and say, we are happy. It's only a transition. No, we are given time to change it over within the next 2 years, right? Because it still has a problem with the ozone layer. But aren't we very satisfied living inside that car? It is not hot. It is not, we are not sweating. But what about the problems that are happening through the process of what is being going out from the exhaust or from the chemical that is used to provide the air condition quality that you want? These are the externalities. Now they are being part of the economic model, because without realization, we were paying for the impacts of that carbon dioxide and that lead that went out into the atmosphere. But now the economists say every action that we do in terms of an economic benefit must take into account the externality cost. Now you see, it's a huge transition. This is part of the green economy. Conversion of these things are the future. If you don't do those things, then you're not going to have the benefit of the best environment that you want. Everybody's action is accountable in the environment. Are we willing to pay for that accountability? Two ways. Either you must pay it in the currency of the situation, which let's call it rupees and cents or dollars or pounds, or by foregoing what you desire. Take the externality, internalize it. That is what the current model tells us. So these are very difficult things, not easy. They are difficult. So the economic model is hugely changing. Now that the solar panel has become less and less available, and see what the G7 said 2 days ago. We are not going to fund any country for coal power from after 2021. That was a huge change. And there was another very, very strong one, which is that we are going to bend the biodiversity loss curve by 2030. They have advanced everything. So there is definitely going to be some huge changes that are going to happen. I put this idea, which I actually did a paper, the very question that you asked was part of a paper which I did in 1998. So in your very first question asked, when did I get involved in the environment now? Right. So I have involved from 1970s and nothing was happening. And my friends and everybody said, "Sir, Kota, what the hell, you all are talking these things, but nothing is happening." So yes, I really got interested. Nothing is happening. So let me see why nothing is happening. And I did this type of academic exercise, as I told you, and I came up with an academic paper and said, why nothing is happening? First, we have not understood what the environment is. And therefore, I am coming up with this model. Now, what is the model that I came up with? And I said, we evolved into nature. Right? We evolved into nature. 2.5 million years ago or sometime there, or billion or whatever it is, we evolved into the planet that we have to consider as natural. And then, as I explained to you, we transform this, we change this gradually by ensuring that we get to the desires, our satisfactions, and all of this we change. But for 98% of this 2.5 million years, for 98% of these 2.5 million years, we have been living in harmony with nature. We don't find anywhere in the world any evidence to say that we have destroyed this, that, or the other. In our zoological jargon, we say that we have lived like all other animals in the same way, despite the fact that we have this fancy structure with us for 98%. But then 12,000, 15,000 years ago, somewhere in the Middle East, this change happened. Because that is where the pastoral agricultural livelihood change happened. From there onwards, we brought into this natural environment something new. Two things. One, we brought in structure. We built. For the first time, we toiled the soil and changed the structure of the soil to benefit our requirement. For the first time, we had to have a shelter over our heads because nature could not provide it, which was provided for us all the time in a cave, which was a natural structure. Why? Because we left the cave and came to the open area where we had to do the agriculture, toiling the soil. Now, being in the open area, you have no choice but to get protected from the sun and the rain and the wind. And you had to have a shelter. And we had to develop a boat. The result, built, structured environment. And where we were, natural environment. Right? So you have two elements now. You have the natural environment into which we evolved, but which you left and developed a built and structured environment, initially just an agricultural pastoral system. And of course, you can now talk about how that transformed and changed and became what we are today. It's very nicely there. If you read that Homo sapien book by Sahel or somebody, Uraj or somebody, it is already there. But I wrote this 98, he wrote the book only recently, right? But there he has very nicely put everything in context with the times and ages and all of those things and shown the transition, right? Ending up with all the big cities and whatever it is and to the current situation, right? Then there's another third element which I recognized and I said in the publication. That is the most important one for me. I will pose it like this for you. Who are you? Who am I? That third element only gives the answer to me. The answer to who am I, or the answer to who are you, is given not in the natural environment, because we have left that, not in the built environment per se, but in this third element of the environment, which is what we are talking all this time, the theoretical environment. The theoretical environment is what makes us what we are. I become an activist, I become a lecturer, I become a learned person, or I become a disaster, a robber, or a tourist guide, or a tourist agency operator. All of this happens on those theories that we have evolved in this environment. In this environment, not in space. Huh? They've all evolved in this environment through experience, give and take, understanding, rhetoric, fighting. You have conferences, discussions, theories, all of these things put together, and you develop the theory of life. You develop the theories to enable your industry to run. You develop theories to run the country, right? All that is artificial. It's our creation. We made it happen. Because the natural theory is very simple. That is what we were for 98% of our life in nature. There are no vaccines. Huh? If you got sick, sorry, that is part of the story. Now, if you get sick, you can go to hospital, you can go to a ventilator, you will be pumped. Even if the heart has stopped, you can put those things and gadgets and make you come back and whatnot. All that is possible. But in that 98% of the time that we were part of this planet, did we have any of those things? No schools. Fantastic, no? Huh? No hospitals. Nobody bothered. Well, if you died, you died. So that's why they died at 35 years. All the fossil evidence show that people didn't apparently live beyond 35 plus or 40. There were no so-called old of 70 years, old of 60 years, old of 50 years. Old is 35 years. It's the terminology now. The time you die and time you can't be decapitated or facilitated or you can't do anything becomes the old age. Otherwise, there's no difference now. Your physical change now. Right? Now 35, you are gone at that time. Now you are living. How did we make ourselves to live beyond that 35? That is our achievement, no? We can't say we have not done anything to ourselves. We have done it, but all that is the theoretical models. Respect to nature or disrespect to nature, or all of that is part of nature. Right? Now think of what is happening in the US today. They may be coming out of the pandemic, but they're killing each other, no? Right? Within a matter of 4 months, they have killed over 1,000 people. Right? Today they are discussing about that psychological gun culture. A 6-year-old child was killed just about a week ago. Shot. Right? Now that is the culture they are talking. Now, fortunately, we are not there anyway. Right? Who knows? We may be there anyway. Because if that theoretical world is seen in that way, the whole idea of economics which we discussed before is totally artificial. John Adams or what? Adams, no? John Adams or somebody who came up with how to deal with land ended up becoming the economic theory. In 1876 or something like that, he came up with this. Today it is a massive subject area with so many people learning, because if you don't know, you can't even run your industry. Right? You have to know how to balance the sheets, how to do it. People are making money without even seeing the money. Right? That is how artificial it is. Right? Stock exchange. You're at home, the money is turning out there. Right? And you're seeing it on the screen and you're making your clicking off on the screen where the money should go and what should happen. You haven't even touched the thing. Right? All that is theoretical artificiality. Right? But that is the one that runs. So these three elements, nature, where is it now? Gone down. Shrunk to a point of concern today. Right? We are saying there is only around 12%. The G7 decided we are going to make it 30%. Like Sri Lanka, we are also saying we'll make 30%. They also said we are going to make it 30%. 4 days ago. Right? Very interesting. Right? So, trying to bring back that naturalness that we are lost is a realization today. So, it has receded. The built environment which didn't exist expanded. The theoretical model that also didn't exist also expanded. So you have three elements which have resulted in throwing our actions and the demands beyond the limits of the environmental planet. That is what we call the footprint going over. 1.5 now. Where is the 0.5 coming from? That is the impact on the planet. That is the environmental concern. If you are living within the planet, then the environmental concern is minimal, not minus. Because to be minus, you will have to give up all of these things and go back, which is not possible. No? That is not what we are advocating. No? We can't go back to the caves. No way. We can't go back to a place where there is no education. Then you are wasting all this time doing this recording and all that. No? Just in vain. Why did you have to record this? My God, let's get back to where we were. We don't want this television. Let's go. No, you can't. We have to get back to a point where we live within the planet. That is this whole argument today, right? Be within the planet, but to be within that planet, you have to change a lot. We have to change a lot. These three elements must be now brought back. I used to call it naturalization. Now, what is the current people calling it? Greening. So I said, no problem. It doesn't matter to me whether you call it greening or redding or whatever it is. Greening. Cities are going green. Industries are going green. Your industry, tourism is going green, right? Travel industry is going green. You name, everything is going green. Theoretically, what I'm seeing is that they're all becoming naturalized. We are trying to make ourselves natural. I think we should not be afraid to provide the best and not tinker with anything in nature. That is what we have to be. People will come. There is no question, because that is the what I see in the world today. The most valuable thing is the real nature, which is not there. And we are still okay in Sri Lanka. We still have it. People may have changed a little bit here and there, but nature still we have, despite the built environment that is around. Because when you really look deep into the built environment, you will realize that our built environment is very, very nature friendly. Sometimes when I say this to the architects, they get angry. I said, your architect is the one that has destroyed it. We modeled the British or the temperate country architecture and we destroyed it. Otherwise, we had some of the best structural models in this country for that purpose. Ask the question, right? Where is the common man that lived in during the times of Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa? Where is his abode? Where did he live? Where are his houses? You will not believe that a professor said this in 1976, 78 and got transferred to Jaffna. Because he said that. He said that our people were living in wattle and daub houses during the historic times. And then he was transferred to Jaffna because it was an insult for the civilization of that time. People must live in what? Burnt brick houses. Why must you live in burnt brick houses? I call them ovens. Right? But why? Because duppat minissu thamai inne mati katuwan. Wattle and daub. Rich live in brick houses. So to make that brick, see how much of environmental loss we are doing. Digging it up, burning it up, transporting it, binding it. Cement industry is one of the worst industries for the environment. Think about all, when you keep adding all these things, then it is disaster. But what to do? I was born into this planet, unfortunately, in the time when all these things were in the peak time. Now we have to fight to make it different, but the majority are in that trend. So what to do? We have to still fight anyway. So.